So my name's Ed Hill, and I'm an architect at the Microsoft Technology Center in Reston, Virginia. Just by a show of hands, out of curiosity, has anybody been to an MTC before? Awesome. Well, you could kind of count this too. Now, this is very similar to our Envisioning Center that we have in a lot of our theaters. So even if you didn't raise your hand, now after this presentation, you can. At the MTC, we are a worldwide organization, so the odds are, here in the United States, if you live near a city that has an NFL football team, the odds are pretty good that there's an MTC nearby. Reston is kind of the Baltimore, Washington area, if you will, and I'm joined. It doesn't work in the UK as much. Do you have a sports team preference? No. Paul is an architect at the UK, and he's going to be helping me out from a demonstration standpoint. The MTCs, what we do day in and day out is meet with customers. So I'm not a product team engineering person, so there's going to be no net new announcements of new features, things that are coming out in this session. What I'm going to be doing is giving you some insight into some of the work that I've been doing with customers, and in particular in that strategy session and ideation session where groups are coming and they say, look, we have access to these tools, and we really just don't know how to use them in specific use cases. So this, unlike normal sessions that I do at Ignite, is not like a 400-level deep developer talk. You're going to see a breadth of technology, and it's all around the theme of executive communications, kind of top-down messaging. The agenda, if you will, for today is going to be split across a couple different things. We're going to focus on just some traditional intranet-based tools, and then dive into a specific kind of town hall event and how you could use the power of Office 365 to both plan, execute, and debrief that event in terms of its success. So if that sounds appealing to you, you are in the right spot. If not, seating's at a premium, give up your spot to somebody else. Right? So this is the overwhelming problem. I mean, Office 365 is a great set of tools, but it is so many tools, right, that it's kind of difficult for a group to get one vision to kind of march to. So if you will, this has been my take working with a bunch of different customers to kind of give them and start giving them ideas that they can use to kind of take back to their IT shop and be able to bring to life. So like I said before, we're going to do an intranet. We're going to plan that executive event, execute it, and then debrief it. And because I know I'm predominantly using a demo tenant for my session, you might question, like, how real is it? So I have brought a couple screenshots of some of the tools that we use inside of Microsoft, because it's Microsoft architects that created the demo environment that you're going to see here, and we imitate what we know. So a lot of what the demo environment is reflection on how we do use the tools. It's just not as much cool data. And honestly, we're not graphic designers, so everything doesn't look as pretty as it does for real. All right. So with that, I think let's get started. You switch over to my machine, Paul. And so what I'm going to do first is just show you, again, kind of more generic kind of intranet-based servicing and ways you can use the tools to bring that messages down to your users. And there's probably no better place to start than kind of what's the homepage for your user base. You know, a traditional SharePoint-based intranet homepage. This, of course, has some links to some very common tools that are being used. If I scroll down, you can certainly see that there's some news that is being bubbled up on this page. Those with really keen eyes, if I zoom in, you notice that the news items that are here are actually coming from different areas and different sites located throughout the tenant itself. So it's bubbling up news from our finance locations, from the intranet page itself, and then even from an HR site that I have. So the news isn't necessarily like the local announcements that you might have had with the older SharePoint sites where it was kind of locked into a particular site. The news features within SharePoint have the ability to aggregate across many site collections. And if you notice, some of them have the little bit of a bold treatment to them where others don't. And that's because you can, via policy, dictate which SharePoint sites' news are more authoritative in organizational news compared to others. So obviously, if you're talking to an executive communications team, they're going to want to own one of those most authoritative places. And so their news can be prioritized above just regular users. And then if I scroll down, again, just other options on a homepage like this, being able to put in stream videos, other web parts around weather and time, and things along those lines. But just again, to just show you some variety, if this is like a traditional intranet, you might also have a page dedicated for the CEO himself, right? That executive. Now, I'm using a commercial term, CEO. It really can be any leader within your organization. Given that I'm from the DC area, it's a lot of government agencies. So if I accidentally slip and say general or somebody like that, you know that that's the language I normally speak. But even on this one here, CEO's connection, if I scroll down, able to kind of see and give the ability for the users themselves to engage with the executive team. So being able to post, and notice it's being captured there inside of Yammer, right, to be able to ask questions of the executive team. It turns out it's probably not just the CEO himself or herself that's answering those questions individually. There's a whole leadership team that's kind of moderating that content and reacting on it. And then can drill down and be able to see some of the more popular threads that are going on inside of that service. It's also not unusual, by the way, to see things like if your executive has a public LinkedIn profile with posts, or a public Twitter account, or one that represents the company, and put that kind of content on this page as well. My HR website here is pretty sparse, mainly because in a fake demo environment, we don't pay anybody. So it doesn't make much sense to have time and absence for tools and pay stubs and all those things. And by the way, in case you're wondering, in the keynote the other day where they showed that site that has to run in IE compatibility mode, that was the time and absence reporting tool within Microsoft, that is what that tool looks like. I thought it was funny. They did not. Right. And then even an IT website. So even IT websites are still a group kind of communicating out. This tends to be a little bit more policy driven, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, how do users get access to services. This site, we put a little bit more effort into making it look a little bit nicer, right? So a nice hero web part there on the top in terms of navigation. Again, of course, some more news. Scrolling down in terms of events and content that's being bubbling up. If you've not seen the newer SharePoint user interface at this point, shame on you a little bit because it's been out for quite a long time now. But the biggest win is actually this one. So if I change the scope of that browser, right, everything else is responsive by design. And this is something that more and more groups that I interact with are leading as a priority because our workforce is becoming more and more mobile than it's ever been. So the content you can't think of as just being siloed to a particular PC. So now that big hero web part is now a swipe gesture on a phone. Believe it or not, if you were a SharePoint developer, that would have taken you like 6 months to build. It's out of the box in SharePoint Online. Sorry, I still got to bring that back every now and then. Right? And then, again, just showing you a few varieties of things that are kind of more intranet specific. Yammer is, of course, really good at those very large communities, and this was demoed in some of the keynotes of the M365 space a little bit earlier. You see here inside of this environment, I have a Yammer community specifically for that CEO connection. So again, a way where people can come in, post questions, especially in advance of a town hall. We might want people to give the opportunity to kind of feed questions in that the executive is going to answer live as part of the event. And then lastly, not to leave out Stream. This is just your tour to keep you up to date in case you haven't used all these tools yourself. But Stream is like that, almost like the YouTube for your enterprise. It's the video streaming service internally within your organization. And to be able to post videos there, and sure enough, for our executive, this is where the actual town halls that we've run in the past are being stored and promoted. Right? So after it has been recorded, it lands up here. We'll come back and play it a little bit later. Back on my IT website, just to highlight a couple other things that we got going on here. If I click into like support, this you see in a lot of scenarios, both in HR and in IT and even in other executive scenarios where you have a wealth of content that you want to be able to provide to your users, but it's just simply too much for users to search through and find the specific piece of information they're looking for, right? So in fact, I work with a lot of groups that have this particular problem here. What they found is that even though they have like a wiki and all these frequently asked questions and everything else posted, in an IT scenario, if the question isn't in the top 3 on that page that the user has, they create the service ticket anyway. And that's because they don't want to do the manual labor it goes through to find that. So this is where like you could use the power of Azure and bring bots into play. And I've hosted one of those on the site here, so I can introduce myself to it, just say hello. How can I help you? Let's say I need to order a new device. Right? Without me having to go to SharePoint search, go through all the answers and everything else, it brings me back that curated result so I can immediately jump there and be able to fill out that device request. Just to give you another variety of, because bots don't have to just be embedded in pages, bots are a Teams element themselves. This is an example of a partner solution It's a little bit more HR themed, so if you're talking to an HR team, that'll help you in that scenario. You can see I just asked this one here while we were setting up, is Columbus Day a paid holiday? It came back, it's not a paid holiday, unfortunately. But it is Monday, October 12th. I'm always forgetting those holidays that move around, what days they are on. So if my kids are off school, maybe I do want to put in that vacation day. But what's nice about this HR bot is it's pulling from lots of other different line of business systems. So I could go back and ask it for my W-2 for 2 years ago. That's not live data. Don't worry about it, Paul. What holidays do I get if I'm part-time? And it comes back with that list. Right? And then even integrating with line of business systems. Let me scroll up. I asked it a question earlier about my dental limit. Well, at least I thought it did. Too many demos. Here we go. What is my dental limit? So what's nice about this is it not only comes back with static content that might be posted on an HR website somewhere that my dental spend limit's $1,000 per calendar year, but actually reaches out to a line of business system to tell me exactly how much of that I have left. Right? So again, that might have taken something that in your organization, you might have had to go to 2 different resources or 3 different websites in order to be able to correlate all that information to pull it back. And the bot can do all of that work for you in order to bring it back, making it easier for your users. That's not my actual dental benefits either. I see you smiling. Its math is bad. It's rounding. All right. So, and again, that's just a little bit of kind of a tour of a few things from an intranet perspective, just to show you that I'm not just full of hot air, and that this is kind of definitely representative, even what we use inside of our company. This is a screenshot just above the fold of what our MSW, our intranet, looks like. Now, MSW is actually really clean and crisp. There's not a lot of information that overwhelms you on these pages, like I see in a lot of my customers, where they want to put a whole mountain of information that's on it. The MSW homepage has a very specific stated goal, and that is to let Microsoft employees know about how Microsoft is being viewed inside the world. So in fact, most of the articles that are on here are external. They're not authored by us directly. It's the marketing teams and the HR teams finding that content that's published out on the internet and bringing it back in. And I don't know if anybody was in Jeff Taper's session, but he announced something about new web parts being able to pull in external news. Likewise, the navigation here is also really crisp. So notice it's very straightforward, and it's not dictated by our organizational hierarchy. Right? It's just who we are underneath that nav, and it is a mega menu that would expand in terms of style. You'd see links to our CEO connection site, like I showed you in the demo. You'd see different leaders' blogs and things along those lines. Videos that they've posted and stuff like that. What's happening is all event-based in terms of both inside and outside the company. And then Find It is just the top reasons that we know through analytics are the reasons why people come to the internet in the first place. Because we don't mandate inside of Microsoft that it's the homepage for everybody. So if someone goes there, we can look at search statistics and page views and things along those lines to find what are those top destinations and put it in the Find It. This is not organized by how the company's organized, and it's not fly-out menu, a fly-out menu, a fly-out menu. And it's not the same navigation holistically across all of our sites. These are things that I see that people try to build quite a bit and struggle to do so because they never finish. Right? You build that organizational nav, by the time you're done, you've reorged. Right? This is Satya's CEO connection website. Again, there's a little bit more to it than this. It's kind of hard to get it all on one screen. But notice that he does host a Q&A event monthly. This is that executive town hall that we're going to be looking at in just a little bit about how to plan it, execute, and debrief it. But then also on this page are, like I said earlier, his LinkedIn profile, his Twitter posts, the Yammer CEO connection I put up there is something that we do regularly within our company as well. And then lastly, just people like to see what these things kind of look like. This is our HR website, which is, again, just primarily a link to a bunch of different tools that it takes for us to get access to information in terms of holidays, insights, pay, and things along those lines. Well, we do have a bot on our IT support website, but I'm not aware of one in HR just yet. So let's actually talk about that executive event. And we're going to plan it first, right, and show you how you can use Teams and some other Office 365 tools to kind of help that group get everything set up to be able to do it. Then we'll try to execute it, and we'll look at a little bit of what tools you have from a debriefing standpoint. So if I go into Teams, you see that I've created a team called Executive Event Planning. And in particular, the one that we're going to plan today is our company anniversary. So our 100th anniversary as an organization. The power of Teams is not just in the persistent chat, right, for people to be able to go in and add whenever they have a couple minutes to answer that next step of the question. It's in the ability for the tool for Teams to be able to bring in all of the other elements of Office 365, but put blinders on it so that it's focused just on this particular project, this particular effort. Because what we want to avoid is users jumping in and out of all kinds of applications and getting distracted by seeing a lot of other traffic related to other projects and other initiatives. There's probably no bigger offender of that tool of distracting people than Outlook. Yes? I don't know about you, every time I open up Outlook, like 3 hours of my life go by, because I'm a filer. I'm now just becoming a deleter, right? So this means that as this team works, let me show you some of the tabs that I put here to collect services for these folks to kind of plan. Of course, we can have files, right? Those files are stored in a SharePoint site behind the scenes. We can even take a look at one of them here, this PowerPoint presentation to kind of what we're going to use to kick off that event. It's not that big a PowerPoint presentation. You able to pull it up on yours? Now, while you're pulling it up on yours as well, let me go ahead. I'm going to open this up in the desktop application just to be a little bit different. You could, of course, edit in Teams itself, but a lot of users still like the full Office client, especially if they're information workers and doing that edit to get access to the functionality. So I can open it up there as well. Yeah, you might as well. Right, so we've got a few slides here to be able to kick off our presentation. This one here is just talking about our, hotels, our 100th anniversary. That's something I grabbed off of, Commons, open media on the internet. Don't think that's my house or anything. Kind of timeline, what our corporate culture is, things along those lines. I don't know, Paul, just to show off co-authoring, if you wouldn't mind, maybe on the corporate culture, add a couple bullet points. This is where I go, look, mom, no hands. Right. So we can, in real time, the whole team can work on this content together. Yeah, always have enough seats for everyone. Awesome. It worked out for this session. Not so bad. Right? So we can obviously, work on this content together. If I go back, and I'm going to use that PowerPoint in just a bit, show you other things that are here. I added the Wiki tab. Now, I know a lot of folks are really into the OneNote, right? Because they're kind of used to OneNote as a tool. I'm going to give you my one value add that the Wiki has, in my mind, a little bit over the OneNote piece, right? And that is that a Wiki, of course, is structured content, right? You have these different pages and different sections. What's nice about wikis is that you can go and have chat conversations about parts of the wiki, right? Where with OneNote, you're kind of stuck with the whole notebook on itself, like the notebook is a document. We have a plan set in place, all the things that we have to get done between now and executing this is the things like making sure a venue has enough chairs in it, speaker prep, right? Content that needs to be created, marketing that needs to be done. What tool is this in Office 365? Planner, right? And of course, then being able to go in and look at all of that kind of aggregated up by the different buckets, look at who might be overworked, be the reason that work's getting behind, so forth. If I go in here, I can actually open up the CEO's Connection Yammer group. Now, people ask, why in the world would you open up a Yammer community inside of Teams? Well, remember what the goal of this Yammer community is. This is all the employees being able to log in and give feedback, right? Or ask questions in the event of that town hall. The team that's using Teams here, capital T Teams, they're the moderators for that. So it makes sense that they need to be able to go back and forth and have private conversations about the discourse that's going on inside of the Yammer community. And not only do they have to have just discourse about it, we even have some analysis going on for us automatically, just in case there happens to be a rant going on within that Yammer community that's getting a lot of attention. So by the way, so this is a solution basically combining Flow, Yammer, and Azure, right? So every time there's an Azure post inside the community, Flow picks it up, sends it out to Azure Sentimentalities, And if it comes back positive or negative, this is a Power BI dashboard giving us an idea of the, shall we say, the emotional state of our users leading up to that town event, right? And if there happens to be something that's extremely negative, well, we might want to fly that and actually generate an alert. This is the group that I have set up inside of here where that's being posted to them to let them know, hey, this is a hot button issue. It's rather negative. There's been a lot of posts about it. Make sure before we put our executive up on stage that we know what the answer is going to be to that question. This, by the way, this solution, if you want to see how this is built, this is a solution that Chris Portlets is going to be presenting on tomorrow. Right? So deep dive here, back here in this theater. Just around lunchtime. I'm going to go back to my company anniversary. And last but not least here, and then we'll move over to running the event itself, is some news. So SharePoint news, again, remember we saw the news earlier already published. This is me taking that news content and bringing it down into Teams so the group can actually launch and construct it and publish that news from here. And if you go back to the actual conversation thread, when a user does click publish, it's alerting everybody within the team that that has gone out. So again, different combinations of ways of things that you could combine in terms of preparation for that event. But let's do the event. Yes? Shall we dare risk it being audience participation with the network? I don't promise anything. So for the evals, if it all dies, we knew it going in. So if you happen to have Teams on your mobile device or you have a PC in front of you, because you can do it browser-only Teams, I've set up a live event with this short URL, aka.ms/townhallreston. And if you enter that in, Paul, just so I can get an idea of what it looks like. This is set up so that anybody can join, public. So these town halls can be certainly locked down to be more discreet than that, just within your org and require a login. Right? This one is open up so that anybody can click on it. If you're on your PC, you can actually choose for it to be browser only. If you're worried about logging in with Teams, it'll give you an option to just say use the web-based interface. If you're on a mobile device, it will open up Teams to log you in. And while you all are doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get set up here and start getting my broadcast ready. You know what? Let's make sure we're all in the same one. That's what it's called? I just want to make sure, because I've done that wrong once before. Yeah, the live event hasn't started. That's great. That's what we actually want. Because I haven't started it yet. And by the way, we're doing this kind of low-key, just with the Teams client itself and just with the camera that's here and just with the headset. It's not realistic for an executive event. But if you want to see how that's done with encoders and cameras and all that stuff, that's what Paul's doing next. Sorry? I'm sorry. Are other people getting in? Yeah, most are. And I can't debug one-on-one in this setting, but we can take a look at it afterwards if you'd like. So don't be surprised if you don't see something right away, because just because I joined doesn't mean the event started, right? So if you've never seen a Teams live event before, it's very different than just your collaborative meetings that you've had in the past. Your collaborative meetings, most people can be a producer of content, a presenter. Almost anybody can kind of share any particular type of content. This one here is much more of a production vehicle. So you notice the Teams client has changed into something that gives me the ability to queue some content, right? And then ultimately send it out and see what's going live. And in the real world, you'd have a whole team of people joining as producers and speakers and kind of tiling them all up. We're just going to make this really kind of simple, where I'm going to go in and you choose from a layout to be able to add video and content. Let me add myself as the video. Let's pull up the PowerPoint presentation that I was using from before. And we'll make that PowerPoint the content. Share, please. This is what happens when you do this on the same machine as opposed to a separate machine. Let's try this one more time. Just share my whole desktop, make it a little easier. There we go. We're obviously going to pull the PowerPoint slide up before we click Start. And then I'm going to click Send Live. But before I do, I want to point out some of these tools that are over here on the right-hand side. So if you will, there is the ability to have some interaction. It's not all one-way audio, despite this fact that this supports a lot of scale. So we're literally talking thousands of users that could be part of this meeting, right? So there is, normally in my scenario, it would have been better for me to tie in Yammer to this, right? Because we have that CEO connections Yammer group already set up. But if I did that, it would have required you to be a Contoso user, right? Because that would have been an authenticated resource. So instead, I used the moderated Q&A. So if people do want to ask questions, feel free. I probably won't answer them all. I'm a little worried what the public might say here, but we're all friends, right? And then there's, of course, the internal team has their ability to chat. So if they want to wake somebody up in preparation, hey, you're the next one, make sure you've got your mic on, ready to go, and stuff along those lines. You can do that all within this space. And then when I click this Send Live button here, what it's going to start is the actual event itself. And don't worry if you don't see something on your screen right away. The reason for that is clicking that Start. It's really just started capturing. Right? Now, the way the system's going to work is it's basically capturing the content that I have here locally amongst my speakers, the audio, the video, and all of those things, funneling it up into the cloud, doing all the different encoding it takes to make that happen, and then it'll deliver that back to the actual clients. And depending on your bandwidth, if you don't mind. Yeah, we didn't practice this at all, right? The reason there could be a delay, and that delay, especially on cellular, could be up to a minute. Right? And it's also worth noting that it's a video on-demand player. So you can't always assume as the executive that everyone is in lockstep with you. They could click pause, walk away, go get coffee, use the restroom, come back, click play again, and pick up from where they left off. Right? So you can expect it to be near real time, but you can't expect it to be, I'm going to ask a question and wait for answers to come back. Now, I did turn on a couple other features here, Paul, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you mind turning on the closed captioning display there in terms of your interface? This is going to be kind of weird because we already have closed captioning going on with me as well. But I did turn on live closed captioning with the event and also turned on some language translation options. So if English is not your first language, we have a few that you could pick from. So English, German, Klingon. I always want to know what I looked like in Klingon. I looked like a Klingon anyway, is what you should say, right? So again, just showing you things that can happen in type of this style event. And remember, this could be inside your organization, outside your organization. It looks like it did work for some of you, yes? Getting it? Awesome, okay. All right, so let me go ahead and stop sharing, and I'm going to end our live event. We're going to talk a little bit about what we could have done after it in terms of debriefing and getting an idea of what success looks like. So obviously, the first thing that I could have done was make sure that and it actually happens for me automatically because I selected it when I set it up, is the event itself was recorded. Right? So it shouldn't surprise you that I could then go back, publish that into Stream. Right? It'll take a second for it to die out there because, again, I was ahead of you. And if this plays inside a Stream, this also has audio to it that I want to mute. Notice that once it's been saved, I not only get a transcription here, and that transcription makes this video searchable. So later on, this happens all the time in Q&A meetings. Somebody who comes back and goes, hey, did you hear we're all getting a stock bonus? This doesn't happen. But, hey, we're getting a stock bonus? Like, no, well, it was on the town hall last week. Well, you don't have to go and watch the 2-hour-long town hall just to find out what are the details and that you're not actually going to get the stock bonus. It's for a whole bunch of other people. You can go in and actually search for the word stock, right, and be able to jump to that moment in the video itself. Now, I don't have one about stock, but if I search for like database, I publish some technical videos that are up here. Notice it goes and has those transcriptions and time codes as to when that was mentioned. Right? And if I were to click that, it would fast forward right to that moment in video and play from there. What also happens a lot of times in town halls is you have more than one speaker. Right? Satya, all the time, not only does he take questions, but our head of HR, our legal officer, things like those, they make it up in field questions as well. And that's why inside of this Stream tool, it's useful to be able to go in and have the system do facial detection for you and be able to recognize when there are different speakers that are the focal point of the camera. Now, it's not identifying who those speakers are, but hopefully you know your executives well enough to know who they are, right? And then you can see when they are on camera from a time sequence standpoint, so you can jump in and then be able to listen to that particular part of the presentation. By the way, when this one plays, let me mute this for just a second. I've done something else here that's kind of interesting because not everybody has the opportunity to watch the video live, right? I'm assuming some people had to be working, right? And in doing that, they can come back and play this, but there's a few other things I've put intermix the video itself. So once I get to a certain time sequence, notice that there are forms that get loaded up that kind of take surveys. So if someone was asking live during that video, hey, we'd like to be able to get an idea of what some additional topics are, or what we should be doing for our holiday party, or things along those lines, the people who weren't there, that couldn't do it as part of the event, have the opportunity to come back and fill out a form, right? Now, I had already viewed it once, thank you. I'd already viewed it once, which is why I had to click to play it. If I was viewing this for the very first time, it would have stopped the video at this form. Right? And then you can collect these, and those forms are going back into the team as well. In fact, speaking of forms, while you all are here, I have one other audience participation moment for you. I created a form that's public that you can fill out too. And again, be nice, but if you go to aka.ms/townhallsurvey, forms don't have to just be internal or embedded in video. You can use Microsoft Forms, right, as we're going to do here, just to give it out to a URL, and you'll be able to fill that out. As you're pulling up that, just a few things here to kind of start to wrap up. Two other pieces. This is in the debrief phase, if you will, right? Can we gather information back from our users through forms? Or we could go into the Yammer group itself. You all are looking down. I'll let you look down. I'll pause for a minute. Is the survey coming up? Too many questions on the survey? Sorry. Inside of the form, inside of Yammer here, Yammer has some built-in insights. So if you do have active Yammer communities, you can go in and pull this up, just if you're the owner of that community. Who are the active people, members, non-members, what are posted messages, what's been read? So a lot of times people wonder, how much data can they get out of the Yammer communities that are there? There's some insights that the tool provides itself, and then being able to tie that workflow and sentiment analysis, those type of things to it, are things you can do as well. And then if we go back to my team here, let's get out of our meeting. Just to show you guys where your forms are going to. So if I click on survey results, I've added this back as a tab into the group. The group is planning, so they can go in and see who are the responses that are coming back. What is the average time to complete, and be able to get an idea, is the company going in the right direction, things along those lines, right? So again, each of these things individually aren't all that unique. It's putting them all together to paint a vision for how such an event can be done. And then last but not least, the last debrief piece, if you're really that concerned about it, after the meeting has been processed, the town hall that we did, you can actually pull down and download an engagement report. And that engagement report will basically show you, especially if people were authenticating in, who logged in and how long were they engaged. Right? So if you're worried about people only logging in and watching the first 5 minutes, this would tell you that your executives were really boring after that. Awesome. So if we go back, let's make sure we're all done. I do have this content in terms of the slides and a lot of other links to resources. So if you want to know, for example, the gentleman that applauded, how to embed form in a video, right, or things along those lines. This is a point drive on my LinkedIn page, and you can go in and not only pull down these slides, you can pull up a whole bunch of lists of resources. So if you want to know more details about SharePoint news, right, or a link to Chris Portlets' post about how to build that Yammer to flow to Azure Sentimentalities, that's linked there. All kinds of things that are related to the topics at hand, given the presentation itself. Believe it or not, I'm done early. The whole goal of this session, if you will, right, was to do kind of a breadth-based tour of what the Office 365 services are, but under a particular use case, which is getting messages from top down inside of an organization, right? And in particular, intranet-level services, and how to plan, execute, and debrief a town hall-style event. Sorry? He's going to get a microphone for questions, I assume. Yeah, well, he went to grab a mic to take questions, so you don't mind waiting just 10 seconds. But that's the end of my presentation. For those of you who don't have questions, feel free to go ahead and leave. But Paul has the mic if we want to take some questions from folks.
Thanks very much. You mentioned that you can see whether or not the viewers are authenticated. You also made a point of pointing out public availability for your form where the answers are submitted. Does the stream only work with inside one tenant?
Yeah, so today, yes, though I'm not sure what's been announced and what hasn't been. Bring up that concern to the stream team themselves, right? It's certainly feedback that we've gotten that stream
so
more stories.
Stream has to be authenticated today. The next session, one of the owners is coming actually, if you're interested. But of course, you can run anonymous events in Teams, so you can do that for up to.
Yeah, which technically we did do an anonymous event.
Yeah.
It's just the recording afterwards would have been only internal to the organization, but that's something the product team has gotten a lot of feedback around. If you ask them directly, they might be able to give you insight in terms of what their roadmap looks like for that.
Thanks. I have another, if that's okay.
Yep.
Compared to Skype broadcast, you seem to have the ability to present your desktop in the Teams broadcast, and then in your clip of the real CEO town hall, you had things like lower thirds coming up. Is any of that included, or is that part of some other broadcast system?
So these are all, you need to stay for Paul's session next. Go ahead, Paul. Yeah, so what you're doing is there's a big difference between just using the Teams client as the production vehicle, if you will, as opposed to third-party encoders that give you multiple layouts and ways to green screen things in and all of that, which would be more of a bigger production. And that's what Paul's going to talk about next. This is why we layered these two sessions back to back.
Just put my logo.
Yeah.
Is there a limit on number of users who can access the video?
Yeah, so that limit today, correct me if I'm wrong, 10,000 is the support limit. This is one over here, sir. 10,000.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's technically a support limit, which means it's not that the 10,000 and first person won't get in.
So under the SharePoint and Teams for the HR Ask, you had the bot in there. Did that take a lot of back-end setup to get it to be that intuitive for those separate systems that it's referencing?
Yeah, so the HR bot that's reaching multiple systems, if you were to build that yourself, it would take a bit more work. You could use services like Azure Logic Apps and things along those lines to do those types of integrations. The bot that I showed you for HR is actually a partner solution. So it has a lot of that intelligence built into it already. So all you have to do is configure it. The bot that I did just as a contrast, the bot that I did in the IT website is a no-code Q&A bot. So you just basically give it the FAQ, it generates the bot for you, you put it on the page.
Okay, cool.
Good question, though.
So on a Q&A piece, are you able to upvote questions from the audience? So, say 5 people ask the same question.
Yeah, and in fact, you can. I didn't actually show the moderation piece, unfortunately, my bad. Yeah, you can reply publicly or reply privately of the questions that are coming in.
And specific to what you asked, you can press like on a question. Yeah, so you can upvote it.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, awesome. I appreciate your time. I'll self-advertise myself as well as advertise everybody else's sessions. If you happen to be a SharePoint person and a little bit more on the custom app side of the house, I have a Power Apps for SharePoint People session tomorrow just before lunch as well. It's a repeat of something I did earlier today. All right, have a good rest of the conference.